Hi and welcome to Blarney Castle and Gardens, and for this week's episode we wanted to bring you and show you a couple of the less known historic structures on the estate and tell you a little bit about them and their functions. So to begin with, I'm actually standing here on the site of what is one of our lime kilns. At various points in time on the estate there have been 4 different lime kilns. And I just want to show you inside this one first of all, and then we're going to give you a bit of a background and the history of why they were so important. But if Paul pops up, we can film and you'll see the size and the structure. I'm actually standing on the top of it really, and if you look down you can actually see inside. Now this was all built of the local limestone, and we're standing on what was the source of, the lime for them. So they would build at location where the limestone was, and in Blarney we're actually on an outcrop of limestone that runs through the entire estate. So handy building material. But I'm actually going to show you over, because I think if Paul films down here you get a sense of structure and the size of these kilns. They weren't a little thing. So this is built into the side of the hillside, and I've actually asked our stonemason John Hart to pop in today just to give us a bit of the background and an indication as to why lime kilns were so important in their time. We're actually looking down over our Himalayan valley. It's a lovely spot, great view. But that's not why we're here. We'll talk about that another day. So we're going to pop down now, and I can introduce you to John Hart. So I'm going to introduce you to John Hart. Now, John is a specialist traditional stonemason, and well, I'm going to say he's one of the best in the country anyway, but
Thanks,
he's an expert at what he does. And I think John's the best man to tell us why lime kilns were so important and a lot of the uses that actually went from these. So I'll leave you to explain, John.
Right, lads, basically what we have here is one of 4 lime kilns that were on the estate. Basically they were built in locations, 2 reasons. 1, obviously lime and the rocks that they were surrounded by, and 2, the locality was built into a side of a cliff or side of a raised area so that it was easy access for the feeding of the limestone into the top of the kiln and taking it out at the bottom, so you had a natural topography to walk off of. Now, lime kilns were a very dangerous place to work in, right? And in any form or manner they're not a nice place. You can imagine the fact that you were burning fires 24 hours a day, all day for 7 days a week, constantly, by feeding it, right? Now, the way it worked was you put a layer of burning fuel at the bottom, i.e. turf, oak, trees, whatever that was cut down around the forestry areas here, and you layered it with a broken layer of limestone, which limestone rocks, basically about the size of your fist. And you sandwich those layers of fuel and rock all the way from the bottom to the top. And what you had is you had an opening at the bottom. The opening worked for 2 ways. 1, to feed air into the kiln so that it could keep the fires alight, and 2, to take out the burnt limestone when it was ready to remove after about 4 days. Now, once you got the fire going, it gradually heated up along the kiln, so you kept feeding it then from the top, right? So when the limestone was burning at the top, dropping down, taking it out at the bottom, then you put in another layer of fuel and another layer of broken limestone, and continuously doing that. And it took about 4 days to get a full kiln limestone out the bottom. And what you had basically is running at around 900 to 1000 degrees to get the limestone to turn to quicklime. Now, quicklime was taken out at the bottom. Again, it was hot, very hot. And what you done was they transported it, but what you do, you cover the lime and keep the moisture away from the lime, because lime wants to take the moisture back into it to regenerate itself, right? The problem with it is that if you allow moisture to go in too quickly, then you could cause an explosion, or you could actually massive fires, right? So transporting quicklime was very, very dangerous and hazardous. Again, for the environment, it was very dangerous and hazardous, because to make 1 ton of quicklime, you were basically producing a ton of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And I suppose from a global health point, or climate change and everything else, this was going back this far, thousands of years ago, when they were actually burning lime. They were producing carbon dioxide right into the atmosphere. As every ton out was a ton of carbon dioxide wasted into the atmosphere. The thing about lime is that over its period of its lifetime, right, which is endless, it takes back the carbon dioxide that it actually put into the atmosphere. It brings it back into itself again when it's curing. So when you put lime into mortars in the walls, or whatever the case may be, for it to cure, it has to bring back the moisture out of the air, or the carbon monoxide out of the air, back into the system, and it gives it a structural status then, okay? So that was basically the principle of the lime kilns. Again, we had 4 here in the Blarney estate, and the reason for it basically was ease of transportation, locality. Again, the topography of the area, whatever the case may be, they picked those areas. You had a house alongside the kiln. In this particular one here, basically the people that were working here stayed in the house. It was a 24/7 operation. You had to keep the kilns alight. They were removed by horse and cart, or horse and butt, or whatever you like to call it, and taken to either used for the agricultural side, which was predominantly, that's what it was used in the estate for, because the estate was it was a large estate, and lime was crucial for the land. So the majority of the lime burnt here would have been used. I would say probably 90% was probably used in the land. They may have turned some wood into quicklime for building, or whatever the case may be. Then, and see, lime has massive implications as well. They used to use it for disinfectants, whitewashing properties, lime on the land, construction. It can be used for loads of different things. To be, as the man says, before the age of chemicals came in, and before the age of all this insecticides and everything else, lime was crucial to the farming communities, and to a lot of other communities as well, for that matter. So that's basically it. That's lime kilns in their essence, right? They're basically a big oven, travelling at 1,000 degrees, and that's it.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thanks very much, John. It's given people an idea of what these are, and this is the one that is open and accessible to the public. It still needs a bit of work. We will be restoring it further in time. It's on a long list of restoration jobs for John, so he's going to be busy. But if you are in, we're down at the Himalayan Walk area. There's a sign which, if Paul pans round, that explains the overall sort of background behind the lime kiln as well. So that's given you a basic explanation, and I hope you've learnt something new anyway today. So thanks very much. We're now going to show you another little bit of hidden history on the estate, and behind me you'll see there's well, to all intents and purposes, a stone igloo, but they're ice houses. So John's going to talk you through the uses and the history of the ice house, and we'll walk up, because one of the really impressive views is the look down into it to get the sense of scale. So we'll head up, and I'll hand over to you, John.
Well, basically they do what it says in the tin, right? They were ice houses. You stored ice in them. Now, basically they were located where you actually had a good supply of ice going to be there on an annual basis, which by rivers or lakes or whatever the case may be. Now, this ice house here was probably fed from the lake, which is Blarney Lake, which is over the ridge. Now, they take the ice out of the lake and bring it here, put it into the ice house, and seal up the house with either straw or whatever to keep any warm air from going in. Now, the amazing thing about these ice houses is that you could actually put ice in here, and 12 months later, the next winter that you go harvesting the ice off the lake, there would still be ice left in the ice house. They used it basically for storing. You could actually store food here, especially perishable goods, where you had you needed to keep cool, which is basically was their fridge, right? But when the elite started to get better acquainted with their cocktails or whatever the case may be, they always had a fresh supply of ice for the ice creams and for the drinks, whatever the case may be, in the summer on the lawns of the mansion. But the whole consensus of this was to keep food preserved for as long as possible in the summertime. So if you can look down into the ice house, it's going quite deep actually down into the rock face. Okay, it's structured outside of the rock, and then what you done was you layered everything with the ice, blocked off the entrance, and left it there until the summertime, until you required your food to come back out. Now, ice houses were basically, every state probably had an ice house, and every locality had ice houses. They kind of ran out of popularity in the sense that big commercial ice houses were being constructed, especially around cities where you had a lot of populations, and you could buy your ice off these commercial ice houses. So, and then again, of course, advancement again, you had your refrigeration coming in, and once that came in, that was the death of the ice house as such. But ice was transported, it was transported in ships across the Atlantics and everything else to keep food fresh while they were transporting it. So all these ice houses were used for that purpose, basically. So here it is today, another one that's just history of the past, I suppose. That's all we can say, and we try to keep them as to the best condition we can to keep them in without actually losing the heritage that they have. So basically we don't do much work to it other than the fact of keeping it in the condition that's in at the moment, make sure that it doesn't deteriorate, and it's going to be there for hundreds of years to come for other generations to look back on, probably from maybe somewhere else in the planet or solar system or wherever we're going to end up in the next couple of hundred years. So that's it, guys.
Great. Thanks very much, John.
No bother. You're welcome. We'll talk later.
We might see if we can get John next week to show us a little bit of the history of the railway in Blarney. We've recently restored our railway turntable at the turnstiles entrance, and so you might see John again next week. But thanks very much for that, John.
No problem. Take care, guys.
Hopefully you learned something new and got to see a couple of new areas of the estate, so thanks very much, and we'll hopefully see you in here sometime soon.